Greetings viewers and welcome to today's info sharing snippet. We'll be covering the inventory issue module within SageStream Evolution. Now, as the name implies, this module allows you to issue inventory for internal purposes within the organization. These could be things such as consumables, stationery, and also the ability to issue specific items to job cards in a job costing module. Let's see exactly how this process unfolds. Firstly, we need to go to our defaults. So under inventory issue maintenance, I'm going to go to my defaults. And we have the ability to specify a transaction code for GL transactions issuing. These would be things such as consumables within the organization. And then also the ability to specify a transaction code for job costing transactions. So in this instance, you would issue specific stock items to a particular job card. We can also implement a workflow process, which is linked to the contact management module, whereby you can set up a workflow to follow through the process of approving certain requisitions and have an approval process implemented within the contact management module. If you'd like to use an option, you simply click on the Use Workflow Process or tick box, and then from there be able to specify an incident type applicable to this particular workflow. We can also implement an automatic numbering sequence for the various documents. So the process with an inventory issue is stage one would be to request stock items via requisition. Once the requisition has been approved, the requisition is then converted to an inventory issue, and then we can also, if need be, create inventory issue templates. And for those three document types, we can implement automatic numbering, specify a prefix for those particular documents, and implement, for example, the number of characters to form part of those document numbering sequences. So automatic numbering, we specified our transaction codes for GL and job costing, and if need be, we can implement a workflow process integrating into the content management module. So if we then move on to our transactions, as I mentioned, the first stage would be to process an inventory requisition. So under inventory issue transactions, I'm going to go to my inventory requisition. And we've got our requisition number there. We've got the requisition date and request by. So say, for example, I'm going to say it was the finance department. And we're now going to issue to a specific GL account for consumables or stationery for internal usage. So I'm simply going to go specify the actual item, the warehouse where the item is situated, and the quantity to be requisitioned or requested. So I'm going to say 5 items, and we can then link this to a specific project. And what you notice is that we have a status column. So there's 3 statuses, and currently now it's in a request format. And for example, the agent who's going to be receiving this request for approval is going to make use of the admin agent. And then really it's a case of specifying the additional items that you, for example, want to request on this requisition document. Right, so I've got my details there. There's my requisition number, the items that I'm requesting, and who's going to be responsible for approving this particular requisition. Validate the requisition. And I'm going to go post requisition now, create document. I have the ability now to go print a requisition report, which is a document really for reference purposes that the person requesting the goods or the items can make use of. So there's my details. Requested by the relevant department, the requisition number, the items requested, and the quantity requested. And so there's my requisition document for reference purposes. Right, so the next step would be I would need to go and have this requisition approved. So now I'm going to go to my active requisitions, and in this instance, the person who is responsible for requesting these items or approving this requisition will see that there's active requisitions available, and we then have our requisition number with our details of the goods that are requested. I'm now going to select the View Requisition option, and you'll see that we now have our items there, and we've got three statuses. So initially there was a request status, there's also an approved status and reject status. So I'm going to say approve on both those line items as there's an approval for those items. And what you notice is that at this point we can also, for example, there could be instances whereby perhaps not the full quantity is approved, and I can then obviously change the quantity there if need be. So this particular requisition has now been approved by the relevant agent. Validate. And I can now simply say post the requisition. So at this point, the approval has been done, and I can also print a requisition report, and you'll see that it tells me that I've got my details, and the status has now been changed or moved from a request status to approved, and I've got my details there. And the next stage would be then to issue the goods. The approval has been done. I would then move on to my inventory issue under transactions. And I'm now going to locate that particular requisition, the approved requisition, by certain, for example, by inventory item or by issue date, etc. I'll go find, and you'll see that I've got my details there. The status is currently set to unprocessed. And I'm just going to convert the requisition to an issue. I've got my stock or my inventory issue number there. I've got the reference number, which was the requisition number. And I'm now simply going to say process. And I can now print an inventory issue note report. So this is the document that the person who is issuing the goods would use as their reference. So I've got details of the inventory issue number, the requisition number, the goods that were issued, and then the person receiving the goods would just acknowledge that they've received those items that appear on the actual inventory issue. Right, so if we then go and do an inquiry, so I'm going to go to my inventory inquiries, and we're going to see, look at the inquiries after the inventory issue has taken place. So I'm going to go to my inventory inquiries, specify my item, and filter for the date range, view that, and you'll see it's got details of the issued IS transaction code. It was for an internal stock consumption. There's my value, and it tells me there's my requisition number and the quantity that was issued on that requisition number. So I've got my details there, whereby the goods have now been issued and stock quantities have been reduced by the quantity that was issued. If we revert back to our inventory issue, and we're now going to go do another inventory requisition, but this time for a job code. So got my details there, and specify details. This instance, in this case, it's going to be for a job card. And once again, I'm just going to go and specify the item. And now I can go link this request to a specific job card. So there's my job card. I want to link it to the warehouse, the project, if need be, and I can do a request and I can validate. I just specify agent, this case, the admin agent, and I can validate. And if need be, I can just go and specify an additional line item and add additional items that I want to add or request for this particular job card. You notice is that we can have a situation whereby you can have one requisition and you can then issue or request items for multiple job cards from the one requisition. Right, validate. That's all in order. I've got my requisition number there, and I'm going to go post the requisition. I've got my requisition report there, which is just details of what was requested. And now I'm going to go to the agent, or the administrator would see that there's an active requisition available. And once again, I've got my details there. The status is set currently to request. I can then go view the requisition and change that status to either being approved or rejected. And to approve both those line items, I've got my job card number, validate, and I'm then going to go post this approved requisition. So there's my details. I'm going to go print the requisition report. And once again, it tells me I've got my requisition details and the status has now been set to approved. The next stage now would then be to go to our inventory issue and issue the items to the specific job cards. Under my inventory issue, I'm going to go and find. Right, so there's my inventory issue, and you can see that the status of those two line items are set to unprocessed. We have our job card details over there. And we can now complete the process. And once again, I'll obviously just process the transaction and the goods will then be reduced and allocated to that particular job card. You notice at this particular point, I've got the ability to make use of a template. So if I use a template option, I can create this item as a template or this issue as a template, and I can then use this particular template for perhaps maybe issues which will perhaps occur regularly, and I create a template based on those particular line items. Right, so we've got the make template, the load template option there for existing templates. I'm going to now process this issue for that job card, and I'm going to go print the inventory issue note. So I've got my details, issue number, requisition number, the items. There's my job card number, and once again, just the ability for the person receiving the goods to acknowledge receipt of those goods on the actual inventory issue note. If we then revert to our job costing, let's just see. If you look at our job card now, so under my job costing, I'm going to go to transactions, job cards. And if I open up that job card, you'll see that we now have our line items there. There's our stock items. We have our requisition number, which came from our inventory issue, and the status is now set to active. And those two items have now been allocated to this job card directly from the inventory issue that we processed. Now, we also have the ability with an inventory issue to use a batch processing option. So you may have instances where you've got multiple requisitions that need to be allocated or issued, and we can then use the batch process feature. So I'm going to go back to my inventory requisitions, and I'm going to just do a and I'm just going to go find a particular stock item there. Right, so I've got my first requisition there. I'm going to just validate and post that requisition. I'm then going to go do another requisition so that we've got multiple ones that we can then go. And validate the requisition, post, and we now have two requisitions which we can then go and approve. So the first one I'm going to go do is that one. I'm going to go and view the requisition and change that from request status to approved. And post the first one. And then I'm just going to go and view the second requisition, approve, validate, and then post the requisition. Right, so in this instance, we've got multiple requisitions that have been approved, and now we can process these requisitions in a batch format. If you want to, for example, issue multiple requisitions simultaneously. So I'm going to go to my inventory issue transactions batch process feature. And I'm now going to just go find either, for example, I can use for all, for job cards or general ledger, and specify my issue date, etc. Find, and you'll see that I've got my line items there. And now it's a case of specifying which items do I want to issue. So I'm going to issue a line item for my first requisition and my second requisition. Select those two line items. And I'm now going to simply say process. And we there have our inventory issue batch. I've got my issue number there with the item that was issued and the quantity. I've got my second issue there together with those details, and I've then processed multiple issues using the batch process feature. So if you look at the process of transactions, it's a case of the goods would firstly need to be requested by an individual department via the inventory requisition, but then move to a state where it becomes an active requisition, and the relevant agent would then need to access that requisition, approve or either reject that requisition. Once approval has taken place, that approved requisition is now converted into an inventory issue where the goods are physically issued and the quantities are just on the individual stock items. And then, as we mentioned, we've got the batch process feature where we can then go and batch process multiple active requisitions and convert them into issues simultaneously. Under the inquiries, if I go to my inventory inquiries, once again, we can specify an inventory item, and we can then go and view the details. It's going to give us details of this inventory issue number, process is set to status set to processed. We've got the details of the requisition number there and the quantity that was requested, etc. So we can do a full inquiry per warehouse, per inventory item, etc. And the transactions detailing the inventory issue will then be available there for viewing. Under our reports, we've got a inventory requisition note report, and I can simply then go specify my requisition number and preview, and it's going to give me details of the items that were requested on that requisition number. We then also have an inventory issue note listing report, and if I view that report, I can specify inventory issue note. either for job cards or general ledger, and I can do my transactions, specify date range, and I can preview, and I've got details of the information together with my inventory issue number, together with the information that was, or the items that were issued on that particular document, and the quantity, etc. So certainly can make use of either looking at the inventory note issue listing report or the inventory requisition note. So as you can see, inventory issue is really a very useful model to make use of. It allows you to issue stock items for internal usage, either, for example, consumables or stationery, or else if you are using job costing, issue individual stock items to specific job cards. I do hope you've enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for tuning in. It's over and out for me, and goodbye.